Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. An absolutely huge week for world markets this week. We're going to go over all the crypto headlines as well as that macro news, tie it all together for you guys and have a look ahead. We do welcome over 500 new subscribers this week and we did pass 20,000 followers on Twitter. So I want to thank you guys for your support. It's only been 2 years ago since I made a video on the couch at home on my old phone to help a few people asking me questions in Facebook groups. I was pretty embarrassed about it. I deleted it and took it down, and then people kept asking questions, and since then I've actually made a video every day for 2 years, 5 on YouTube and 2 in our Facebook group. So as a thank you for your support, we're going to be giving out a few of these cool wallets to the best comments. Anyone on Facebook, Twitter or YouTube that gets involved and supports us, keep an eye out for a direct message from myself or the team to thank you with a hardware wallet. This week, our members did get 2 extra videos, including my ultimate cheat sheet. So the fundamentals, the technicals, and the sentiment analysis that I do. What am I looking at, whether I take a trade or a long-term investment? I've got that video and we are putting that into PDF format for our members in our Facebook group. It has led to some fantastic results even just this year. You know, these sort of results don't come about in the stock market or any other market. Now, of course, we do have some losers, but when you're planting the seeds, think about it like venture capital. It's these huge winners which are outnumbering the losers and giving you those big returns. And for those of you that watch the full video, I am going to share another gem that's already up 100% this week since I shared that with our members as well. And I think there's plenty more of these opportunities around the corner if you do your fundamental analysis. A final bit of announcement here was a little bit humbling for us, where we got picked up by the Investor News channel, a streaming service called Roku in the US and Canada with 25 million active viewers. They actually approached us and said, hey, we'd love to put Nuggets News on our investing channel. So let me know if you're from the US or Canada, have you heard of this? I can't wait to try and grow our audience overseas as well. And it's great to get recognized for all our crypto news that we are producing. But into the macro news here, and we start off the week in Australia with another leak, another hack. 100,000 Australians' private details exposed on this attack on Westpac Pay ID. So it seems every week there's a bank or a company in Australia that is getting hacked. The really worrying thing for me this week, though, was all these raids on journalists. So the feds raided this News Corp journalist's home, and then the following day we saw raids on the ABC over a broadcaster. And then this other one here, this whistleblower saying, I felt like I almost died, facing 160 years in jail for being a whistleblower in Australia. So the freedom of the press is, it's never been more in danger, and that is really worrying in Australia, a country we consider to be pretty free, that this sort of thing is happening in our backyard. I'm not familiar with the whole story. If you are more familiar with it, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and something we'll continue to cover. In terms of our local economy, our housing market downturn is now the longest on record. Now, a lot of people have called the bottom since the election, saying that, things are going to get better and the Liberals are going to turn it around, but I'm not going to be so quick to call that myself when Australia's economy is now at the lowest levels since the GFC. It is slowing down. This is something that we've been warning about, and others, for a number of years. The other thing that I was not aware of this week was the slowing growth in commercial vacancies. Apparently, there is a big fine, a big penalty if you lower the lease or the rent on these commercial properties. So this was news to me. Again, I'm not an expert in this field. I want to have guests on the channel to talk about all this, but a lot of people would rather have it vacant than pay that penalty to the banks. And this is, just keeping more and more shops empty. The other piece of the pie here that I want to talk about, which we covered in our documentary, was this new argument put forward about should we pay land tax instead of stamp duty. So now that sales and the property boom have all slowed down, we mentioned that state governments get a huge percentage of their revenue from this stamp duty on inflated property prices. So now that that is all cooling off to the tune of 30 or 40% in some states, they want to start to charge land tax that you'd have to pay every year. So, if this property flipping is going to slow down, hey, how else can we get our hands, and how else can we, penalize the consumer almost? People don't have this sort of money just laying around, and it's going to make property less attractive again, in my opinion. Okay, so the Big news this week was the Reserve Bank of Australia finally slashing the cash rate. We covered this in our documentary. During the GFC, Australia went to 3%, and it's since been as low as 1.5% for 2 years or more. So now we're down to 1.25%. They're predicting more rate cuts ahead. You guys know the story. I've beaten this drum to death. I think there's really tough times for Australia ahead. Now we're heavily reliant on China and a lot of these other economies. So if the global economy has a slowdown, a turn down, that is really going to affect Australia. What we're starting to see in China is pretty scary. The second Chinese bank with 100 billion in assets on the verge of collapse, and the state having to step in. And there's so much shadow banking and debt in China. We don't really know the full extent to it all. It's pretty hard to get accurate statistics about anything in China. So something we want to keep an eye on. They're going to continue to pump money into their economy. I've spoken about this peg to the US dollar and the Chinese yuan. So the governor's saying here that it's tremendous room to ease monetary policy. So one by one, every central bank is saying, hey guys, we're about to turn the taps back on with money printing, low interest rates, and be as accommodative as we can, do whatever it takes. And this is the first time that we've really seen Bitcoin have a huge correlation as people are trying to get money out. They know that devaluation of their local currency is coming. There's capital controls, and we really saw a big correlation to the Chinese yuan price movements in the Forex markets to Bitcoin having its surge. So that is something that's just another bullish element for Bitcoin, mid to long term, as one by one these sort of things continue. And this was really apparent in the volume of Tether trading, over 50% coming out of China in recent trading numbers. Now, India had also cut interest rates this week, and these people are threatened by Bitcoin. Now, they're proposing a 10-year sentence for anyone caught in possession of Bitcoin, but all this does is push it into the grey and black markets, and it's going to put a premium on the price. So when people are desperate to buy some Bitcoin in their country, they're going to pay a 20 or 30, 40% premium for Bitcoin. That's all it does, guys. You can't make Bitcoin, which is only software and math, illegal. You can only change the on-ramps and off-ramps and push it into the shadows. Similar story in Italy, and I covered this. One of our most videos this week was, is history about to repeat? And we see Italy, being told that they can't kick the can down the road. You're going to be penalized by the euro and whatnot. They've got a big overhanging debt problem. The Eurozone's most indebted country, and it's actually the fourth most popular country for the trading of Bitcoin, which a lot of people didn't realize until this video this week. So we know the story in Europe. They actually didn't even get as far off zero as the United States before they're already having to likely turn down interest rates again and print more money. And I love this headline here. A lot of people don't believe me when I talk about negative interest rates on mortgages, but this guy's bank just called him and offered him a negative interest rate to borrow money. They're so desperate for you to go into debt, they will pay you each month instead of you paying the interest. Now, all that ties together to what we should expect from the G20 meeting this week. So they're going to, the usual stuff, money laundering, terrorism, tax avoidance, and they're going to come together to try and have a bit of synergy with their regulations and whatnot. So, I'm not sure what to expect out of here. There could be a bit of fear come out of this if they crack down their stance, but Bitcoin is the remedy. Bitcoin is the solution, and they all know it. They're all scared of it, and they want you to be forced to use the system where you lose, when it leads to inequality, and more people are opting for the Bitcoin solution. Trump did actually get a deal here reached with Mexico to stem the tide of migration, as I spoke about last week. So tariffs suspended. I guess that can be viewed as good news by the stock markets, and stocks did have a good week this week. But it's been all about the Fed and the standoff between Trump and the Fed. As he's saying here, stocks would be 10,000 points higher if the Fed kept rates lower. I'm not sure about that, but him and Jerome Park didn't really seem to click at the start, but Jerome Park has absolutely bent the knee since and done that weight at 180 since we spoke about. If you want to have a look at this tweet here by Shane Oliver, this is the predicted, Fed funds rate at different points in time. So what it's showing you here is that every year they say next year things will be better. We'll increase rates next year. And finally they got there and they raised rates way too quickly.
I'm thinking now that they only did that so they could cut again before we head into the next downturn. And, they're so low from the bottom that they can't cut 5% this time without going to deeply negative interest rates. But the big story of the week was obviously Jerome Park basically coming out and saying we're going to do whatever it takes. This is the equivalent of Mario Draghi's whatever it takes speech a few years ago, where he signals the openness for the Fed to cut if needed, do whatever we can to keep the economic expansion moving forward. Now, when did that become the Fed's mandate? Haven't they heard of something called the business cycle, where it is natural for things to slow down and turn down? We weed out all the malinvestment. It's part of a healthy business cycle, and it absolutely does my head in that we've had this record expansion, all this money printing and low interest rates, and they're saying we're going to keep this going for as long as we can because it just doesn't end well. People are already too in debt. There's too many zombie companies. Inequality has reached record levels. How does this end well? What universe are we living in? I was pretty passionate about this. I did take to social media and have a bit of a rant, and I'll let you guys pause the video or read that on our public Facebook page if you like. Now, legendary investor Stan Druckenmiller dumped all his stocks this week. And when you start to read about all this stuff, there's this tendency to panic and think, oh my God, the market's going to crash next year, sell everything, buy gold, silver, buy Bitcoin, stockpiling food, and the zombie apocalypse is coming and all that sort of thing. So guys, take a deep breath and realize that there are going to be investing opportunities. The world is not going to end. Everything goes in cycles. But this is actually cause for concern when a legendary investor that's made money, I think every year for 30 years, is actually got to the point now where he is dumping his stocks, piling into US bonds. We know with those bonds you can get a 1 or 2% interest rate, pretty much risk-free, rather than trusting stocks or any other risky assets out there. We know that more and more people are turning to gold. Even central banks themselves are now stockpiling gold, as well as the inflows into the ETFs. I've spoken about that a lot, where I see the gold market, particularly in that video we did this week. And gold in Australia is trading at record highs. So this isn't Venezuela or some random country that's having hyperinflation. This is Australia. We've had a record economic expansion, and yet this is telling a story. Gold is at record highs compared to our local currency, which continues to weaken. And one by one, more people are waking up to the fact that their value is being destroyed by central banks, and they're going to turn to Bitcoin and gold. Now, if you want somewhere safe to store your cryptocurrency, we know that is one of the advantages over having to store large amounts of gold or silver. The Ledger Nano X is one of the better options. I did my tutorial this week for you guys. I do recommend this device. You can store over 100 different cryptocurrencies on that now. We've got a link in the description below, but watch that tutorial if you want more information on that. In terms of that doom and gloom that I have been focusing on so far in this episode, I wanted to highlight the fact that there is so much money still sloshing around that wants to find a home. So just because the economy is turning down, it doesn't make sense for people to invest in it. It doesn't mean that there's not money out there that wants to invest in certain things. So the amount of fintech deals is breaking records. We see hundreds of billions of dollars being pumped into these tech startups, these companies. So there's money out there, it wants a home, and I think it is going to flow into Bitcoin and gold and these other assets if it doesn't flow into stocks. But again, a lot of that depends on how low the Federal Reserve take interest rates to keep that stock market bubble going. I also spoke about a number of opportunities with legendary resource investor Marin Katusa. So this was an hour-long interview. You guys have loved this so far. Precious metals, oil, renewables, the energy markets, the gaming markets, which Marin have just gotten into recently, as well as his thoughts on crypto and blockchain and some industries that is going to be applied to. So there's plenty of opportunities out there, guys. Don't go super bearish and think the world is going to end next year just because you're now learning about this sort of stuff. Okay, so over to Facebook Coin here, and we all know that anyone can knock up a Bitcoin node and Ethereum node. That is the purpose of having an open source cryptocurrency. And at the other end of the scale here, we have Facebook planning on charging $10 million to run a node for its global coin. So let me know what you guys think about that below. That is pretty crazy number out there, and obviously it's going to ensure that only high-end corporates and enterprises can even afford to run a node and run Facebook Coin. This was interesting to me that Russia was actually considering using global coin for the oil market. I'm not sure, the authenticity of this. If anything, I would have thought Facebook would be way more open to Bitcoin rather than using something that's, from the US and Facebook. That just doesn't really add up to me. But again, let me know what you guys think of that below. I actually think China and Russia are far more likely to head in the direction of a gold-backed sort of cryptocurrency or, backing their own currency up with that. Now, this week we did state that we thought the EOS Block 1 event would be a sell the news event. It had a tremendous run going into it, and EOS was down big this week. But this was positive news. So EOS holders voting to reduce the annual inflation, the new supply of EOS coins, from 5% to 1%. So I guess it's EOS's version of the halvening, or we also saw Ethereum reduce that new supply. So, if this all gets passed through, this is great news. I actually think EOS had a lot of good news go a little bit unnoticed. So I've got Ross from EOSphere coming on the channel this week to speak about what you might have missed during that EOS get together and a few of the smaller news items. But this is something that you obviously want to look at when you're analyzing any cryptocurrency, the future inflation and supply. Wax this week, another one of the gaming projects I recently had on the channel for Gaming Week. An announcement of an announcement. I know we hate these guys, but E3 is an absolutely huge event on every gamer's calendar, and they will be announcing a new partner there. So, look, I think this is one is going to perform really well going forward. I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. Neo was one that has been really struggling recently, but they have unveiled their new DBFT, a bit of a mouthful there, guys. I have spoken about this in my Neo fundamental analysis, but basically, delegated Byzantine fault tolerance, it gives you finality, which means that you can rely on transactions being settled and final rather than proof of work where we're waiting for confirmation and it's a percentages sort of game. So Neo's vision of having this digital asset sort of blockchain, I believe it's a bit more back on track. And a few months ago, we were really worried about Neo. They hadn't been making progress, but I think Neo has become, a real contender again. They've got some new people on board, and price-wise, it's really struggling, still down over 95% from its all-time highs. So I think this is one that the traders are going to get on board pretty soon. We're going to see a bit of a renewed interest. Cardano also unveiled a new roadmap this week. We don't have exact dates, which, we know how hard it is to give exact dates in the world of crypto, making progress and whatnot. But watch my Cardano fundamental analysis that I did a couple of months ago about this one. These guys are heading in the right direction. I absolutely love a few of the things that they're doing here. And they're in that battle, with EOS, Neo, for those platforms where people are going to make dApps, as well as that currency element that they are going for. I did have to redact this news article that I covered last week, and I did pat XRP on the back and said that this is good news for holders if a bank is actually going to use it. But Thailand's largest bank actually retracted that tweet saying that they have no plans to use XRP. So look, there's a lot of rumors floating around that there's a big announcement coming for XRP holders. Technically, this one's looking like it wants to break higher as well. So it's one that I'm watching for trading. But let me know what you guys think about this one. Are the banks going to use XRP is the ultimate question there. So Charlie Lee met with a US presidential candidate Andrew Yang. Now, Litecoin has a face to it, which we don't really have for Bitcoin. There's no marketing agency. So a lot of people a few months ago, when Litecoin was at $30, thought Litecoin is dead. It's just a testnet. It's never going to go anywhere. Obviously, we did our video about the halvening and how I think that Litecoin was going to boom. And I'm still looking higher for these targets for Litecoin in the midterm as we approach the halvening. Charlie Lee is going to continue to surprise us. They're going to do a lot with the Litecoin Foundation. It's going to get mainstream adoption, and Litecoin's hash rate jumped to new highs as well. So, it is one of the most secure proof of work coins. It's got a huge community. I think Litecoin is going much higher in the medium term. We also got the rumors out there this week that there's a new candidate for who is Satoshi. Now, Paul Satoshi was a criminal mastermind, a bit of a dark background. I don't think this guy was Satoshi, but either way, this was a fascinating story that I covered earlier on in the week for you guys. And I think with the whole G20 governments pushing this narrative that Bitcoin and crypto are bad, they're going to look for stories like this and pick them up. And that's what you're going to read in the mainstream media. Okay, so into the technical analysis. Well done those of you that took a short here on June 1st when I said that I think this was going to be the sell the news event. This was actually down over 30% at one point this week. As I touched on just before, I think we've actually pulled back to some pretty attractive levels here, particularly if we get into these weekly moving averages back in $5. I'd be looking to, again, trade EOS depending on what the larger markets are doing, because I don't think it was as bad a news as people thought, but a lot of hype got priced in pretty early there. So into the Bitcoin markets, look, we know on the weekly time frame we've been talking about this reversal doji. We've been so extended on the RSI, we are due for a pullback. At the moment, the sell volume on the weekly time frame isn't as big as what we've seen on these green weeks with the buyers stepping in. But we're just holding around these moving averages now. We've pulled back into them. Are they going to act as resistance rather than support on this entire way up? So, look, we did lose that key level I outlined last week at around 8,200 there, and we've had a bit of a sell-off. Look, it's not huge, guys, but at the moment, I think people are waiting to see what happens next. Nobody's too keen to short the market here. A lot of people are hoping that Bitcoin gets down to this sort of 6,000 level and have a chance to buy in. Now, if we have a bit of consolidation for a few weeks here, you may get to those levels, but I think there's going to be a big appetite for buyers if we get there. Our cycle brackets told us that weakness was going to last until June 16, likely, if we lose that level where the cycle bracket started. So we're sort of looking for this to chop around sideways or lower into June 16 here, and then we're looking for that push up thereafter. Other coins I just want to talk about quickly here. Ethereum and the ETH BTC pair, it's just in this tight range where we've bottomed a number of times if we zoom out on the weekly chart. And this is one where at some stage against Bitcoin, I think we are going to see a big move higher, and that's going to result in some big USD price moves. So the next stop is really anywhere around, high 300s, 400, even testing, $500 there once Ethereum gets moving. We know that Litecoin, just refuses to have a green week. It's continued high here. It is running out of steam volume-wise there, but the traders are absolutely loving this one. In terms of the other coins, guys, I am sticking to looking for trades on margin in those large cap coins. They're the ones that have been moving and giving the best trade opportunities out there. Look for those fundamental catalysts, use your checklist, and we're going to find some great trades out there. For those of you that have hung around to the end, I did promise I would share a gem. And that is Wax. So Wax has got delegated proof of stake. If you guys want to check out that interview, I have done a fundamental analysis right up for our members. It's already up 100%, and I think this one is going to be one of the best performers for the week of June. If you want to join us, guys, head over to nuggetsnews.com.au. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in. Please smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share these videos around, and thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.